Apparently I already started. I'll pause it. So, okay, so I'm just gonna say that, I'm Andrea Sturmer. I'm the training committee chair for the Florida chapter of NAMA, the North American Hazardous Materials Management Association. And this is a NAMA webinar that we are so happy to have Jordan, it's Baez, correct?
Baez.
Jordan Baez from the city of Jacksonville to talk about gas stations and whether or not they should be inspected for hazardous waste. So so everyone knows it's being recorded. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce see, I already said it, Baez, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, Jordan Baez graduated from the University of North Florida with a bachelor's degree in biology, and he's worked for the city of Jacksonville's Environmental Quality Division and the Hazardous Waste Program for almost 7 years. He's an environmental specialist and is responsible for inspecting facilities in Duval County to ensure compliance with the hazardous waste regulations. So thanks again, Jordan, for agreeing to speak for a NAMA webinar today. Go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you, Andrea.
So yeah, one more thing. I'm so sorry. I just want, for the other people that have joined, if you have questions, we're going to wait till the end, but you can put them in the Q&A and we'll go over those at the end of Jordan's presentation. All right, now I'm muting myself, Jordan.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So basically, this is just an overview of why we think gas stations should be inspected. Get this actually working. There we go. So historically, we have left the gas stations in the hands of our tanks program to regulate. And from those, we know that they're generating hazardous waste in the form of petroleum contact water, used fuel filters, spill media, things like that. So we just wanted to address these issues and provide compliance assistance to try to get them in line. In Florida, there's about 7,500 gas stations and over 400 active gas stations in Duval County. So we found them. If you go to the DEP storage tank compliance page, and I can do a live demonstration of this. Down at the very bottom, there is a link for facility registration. And then down at the very bottom again, for the locations and owner information. And you can select by county. So let's do Miami-Dade. You click on that, it'll retrieve almost 5,500 locations. And from there, you can pop it out as an Excel spreadsheet. I can get this to open. There we go. But this has a lot of stuff that we don't really need. So if you sort by facility status, there's a bunch that are abandoned and closed. I think it's usually the majority of them. So if we scroll down, whoop. I really went past it. Okay. See, so yeah, 2,800 facilities that are closed or abandoned. And then if you sort again by the facility type, we can get rid of all the ones that aren't retail stations, which again is going to be a lot. It's another almost 1,800 facilities that are clogging this up. So we get rid of those. Now we're left with all the retail facilities, and you can search by the owner name. So here we have all the 7-Elevens. There are see, 62 different 7-Elevens in the Miami-Dade area. And over here in this column, we have a contact person and a phone number. So you can reach out to that person to try to get started with the inspections. Need this anymore? What I would also recommend is that apparently, according to the tanks program, these facilities are notorious for not updating this information. So if your county has a tanks program, I would coordinate with them because they usually have the most accurate information of who to reach out to. So once we start the inspections, you can kind of divide them into two areas: the store side with the retail related waste, and then the fuel side with the actual fuel related wastes. In the stores, you'll see that they're selling things like aerosols, automotive fluids, cleaning chemicals, medications, vapes, and they're using fluorescent lighting. So we have to check how they're managing any damaged or expired products. Some of them they're sending back to the distributor for credit. And we have to check if this is documented. Do they actually have a plan to deal with spills from damaged products? Is the plan only at the corporate level? Is it actually being implemented at the store level? For waste from the fuel side of things, they have the used fuel filters, waste gasoline that they have to drain out when they change the filter, PCW, absorbent material from spills, and shop rags. Some of these, again, they're non-hazardous if they're actually managed properly. These facilities have to be doing hazardous waste determinations. They have to maintain records, and some places they have multiple stores picked up by the same transporter, and they just combine all those wastes into one. So it's difficult to get an accurate estimate of what actually is being removed from each store. This is a pretty standard spill kit, just some absorbent material and maybe a bag or a drum to throw it in once it's been used. You have to check to make sure that they're actually collecting it. It's not being thrown in the trash, and that it's stored in a properly closed and labeled container. For spills that are over 25 gallons, they have to report the spill to the state watch office, and any absorbents used in the cleanup of that spill are exempt from counting towards their hazardous waste status. But they have to maintain some sort of documentation that they responded to a reportable discharge. In Duval County, even if it's under 25 gallons, but over 10, they have to report it to us in the emergency response division. And then they also have to maintain, they have to manage it as a hazardous waste. Some of these facilities have car washes. So we have to check what detergents they're using. Where do the floor drains lead? Is it to an oil water separator or some sort of recirculation system? We're checking to see how any oily water or solids or filters or whatever is managed. Some of them we're seeing that the car wash is serviced by a completely different division or company than the rest of the facility, so it can be difficult to get records again for that. Some of them have service stations. They're not very common here in Duval County. We mainly see them at places that cater to truckers, and they might also have a mobile mechanic on site. And these are just your standard automotive wastes. These facilities might actually be independently owned and operated. So some of the main problems we're seeing during these inspections, first off, it can take a lot of back and forth to find the right person from the corporate office to talk to. And this is super important because at the store level, most of the managers They might not even know the name of the company that comes up to service the equipment, who removes the waste, how often this actually happened. It's almost all handled at the corporate level. So it's really important to find the right person to talk to. Another thing, there's a big difference in the levels of knowledge of what needs to be, of how to manage hazardous waste between the store and the corporate level. But make sure that if you're outside of Florida, make sure to check your local regulations on this. So the corporate, they might have standard operating procedures and plans and everything for certain waste, but the stores aren't necessarily adhering to these policies. There's a pretty high turnover rate for store management. So they might not be receiving adequate training. They might be brand new and never had to deal with anything like that. Then hazardous waste determinations, they have to be doing them on the fuel, used filters, and PCW before disposal, and none of them are doing this. And then disposal records, they're not maintained at the individual stores. The store manager might sign an electronic work order, but they don't get a copy, or if they do, they're not hanging on to it. And then corporate might not be hanging on to it either. And if they are, they're hanging on to it for some, not for everything. And they're not hanging on to them for 3 years like they're required to. And again, some of them might be combining pickups from multiple stores into one disposal. So yes, I think we should be inspecting gas stations because there's a lot of potential waste streams, and this is a very unregulated industry from our end, and like they need a lot of education and compliance assistance. And as Andrea said, in May, we're going to be doing a more in-depth presentation at the Florida NAMA workshop. So hopefully we can go a little more in depth then. In the meantime, if y'all have any questions, you can throw them in the chat now, and I'll try to get to them, or you can take my contact information.
Thank you, Jordan. If you want to leave that screen up for a bit, actually the Q&A is where we're going to go ahead and put those questions. And we do have one from Don Stillwell with Pinellas County. He wants, I'm not sure if you can see it, but I'll go ahead and read it for everyone. He's interested to know about the vapes. Do they accept returned vape products? And do they admit that expiration occurs? Where would those expired or waste vapes be going?
Most of them, from what we have seen, they say that their distributor will take back any expired vapes. Most of them say they can't keep it on the shelf long enough for it to become expired. But they say that, yeah, our distributor allows us to return the expired. Some of them say they take damaged ones as well. Others say they just throw the damaged ones in the trash. They don't know how to properly handle them. Some of them say, yeah, we can return some of them for credit. And, you know, like RJ Reynolds or Jewel, they don't give us credit for it. So we just damage it out and throw it away. It just depends on the company and whoever their tobacco distributor is.
That could be a little scary, throwing away a potentially P-listed hazardous waste.
Yes.
I know Don is giving a presentation about e-cigarettes, actually.
Yeah.
Jean is commenting that they've requested records to back it up, but haven't received any yet. Okay.
Yeah, that is another thing too. They have to be able to prove that they're actually receiving credit for this.
Yeah, it's potentially for reverse. Well, let me think about that. Reverse law. It would be reverse logistics actually, because they're not. I think it's reverse logistics, not reverse distribution, because distribution is for prescription, if I'm recalling correctly. So as long as they're able to give them some type of credit, then, or they're being reused somehow, then it would be legitimate. Let's see, there was another comment here. Catherine from Pinellas was also from Pinellas was wondering if you conduct co-inspections with your tanks compliance people, and if so, I mean, do you think it would be beneficial? Don't you guys do both types of inspections? How's that work at the city of Jacksonville?
They are separate divisions.
Oh, okay, got it.
At COJ. So yeah, we aren't doing co-inspections. We've been talking about maybe doing some cross-training. So if we see something during our hazardous waste inspections that would stand out, it maybe would be better addressed in the tanks world, and then vice versa for them if anything stands out during the tanks inspection that they think would be better for us to handle. But at this time, no, we're not doing co-inspections.
Okay. I was seeing if I could unmute any of the participants in case like John wanted to expand on his question, but unfortunately, I'm not seeing an easy way to do that. I'm going to try one other thing here. Aha, here we go. I found it. Don, watch out. Where'd you go? There you are. Allowed to talk. All right, Don, I think you can unmute yourself and follow up with any additional comments about the vaping stuff, because of course this is such a hot topic right now. Did that work? Allowed to talk? Don, I don't know if you can hear me, hopefully. See if that, or put a comment in there if it's not working. I clicked allow to talk, but whether or not that, Catherine, I'm gonna go ahead and allow you to talk too.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
You want to go ahead and just ask your question?
Yeah, hi Jordan. Thanks so much for the presentation, and I apologize for my typos in my questions. I was just curious. It's kind of
totally fine.
It's unrelated to the presentation directly, but I was just curious if you truly get notified of spills over 25 gallons, or even the ones under 25, which I think is interesting that you require notification of those. I just have this, image in my head of the people that start pumping their gas and then go on into the store and do whatever, and how much of that overfill is happening / spill. Do you really get notified?
I hope, I guess. Again, for spills over 10 gallons, that is handled by a separate division. That's our emergency response. And again, that's something I wish we were a little more integrated with.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, I know that
the larger spills get reported to the state. So
right. Yeah, I mean, I know the pumps have come a long way in terms of the technology and the shut-off valves and stuff like that. But anyway, well, I appreciate it. I really look forward to your presentation at the workshop too.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
And it'll actually be other people, so new faces doing
that. Yeah, it'll be two different speakers. And Jean, I know you probably already figured out, I unmuted you as well. I know you maybe wanted to add something to the conversation.
Yeah, Catherine had asked about joint inspections. One thing that they're finding is that there's different representatives for tanks and for hazardous waste. Tanks are pretty clear cut. We have our contacts. They pretty much know what's going on. What they're finding with hazardous waste is that's not so much the case. They're being passed around people. They definitely take tanks, the tank side of things, more seriously than the hazardous waste.
Yeah, I can understand that totally, Jean. I feel like that's very normal for the world of hazardous waste in general. We're always thought to be somebody else, it seems like. That's interesting to know.
The things that they're uncovering and they'll go more in depth at the workshop, but we pretty much knew we would, but we've opened up a whole can of worms for us. We're now, I'm actually going to contact EPA to see how they would look at this stuff, but we are now not just looking at the gas stations, but we're starting to work backwards to the transport, to the contractor that comes out for the spills, the transporter for the spills, and the facility that it ends up at.
Very
Because
cool.
there's a big breakdown in there.
I would agree. And with your big port up there, I'm sure a lot of that's happening there, right? In terms of distribution and things like that.
Yeah, we're finding there's a lot of stuff going to a lot goes to WRI, which is waste recovery. They either do wastewater treatment or they do non-hazardous solids to the landfill.
Mm-hmm.
And we're finding a lot is going to them.
Mm.
And a lot is being labeled as used oily waste. And you don't really find oily waste from a gas station.
Right. Well, that's a great angle. I know it's a short period of time between now and the workshop, but I'm sure if you found anything out, you'll share it then. So
yeah,
that would be really good to know. Thank you, Jean.
We do have one other question about records for disposal of drained gasoline from fuel filters, and if the contractors actually document that on records of service. And I did have a comment about that too, once you have the opportunity to think about that one, Jordan.
Yeah, what we're seeing is this is not something that they're documenting. From our tanks inspectors, we've seen that they typically just take when they're changing the filter, they just drain it directly into the sump and let it mix with the petroleum contact water, which they shouldn't be doing. They should be managing it as a separate waste. I have seen some documents where they saying they came out and serviced something, but they're not any sort of disposal records or anything like that. It'll just say we worked on dispenser number 4, and that's it.
So do you mind if I add a little bit of conversation to that from my perspective at the state of North Carolina? I've learned through inspections of the, excuse me for not being able to think of what they're called, the places that have the bulk fuel. I forgot what they refer to them as.
Terminal.
Yeah, terminal. Thank you, you guys. I've been to one terminal, and through that inspection, I learned that when like gasoline is being separate, like it's in the absorbent pads, or the gasoline itself is going off for as a commercial chemical product.
Mm-hmm.
If it's that, so commercial chemical products that are reclaimed are not considered solid waste because they're not discarded, and fuel is normally burned. So it actually kind of becomes exempt from a good portion of the hazardous waste regulations. The terminal I went to,
they're properly documenting.
What's that?
That if they're properly documenting it.
They have. I'm going through the RCRA online document talking about gasoline. I think I remember there's some type of documentation they're supposed to do, but it's not necessarily. It's like an FAQ about that. And I could probably share this too. It's considered commercial chemical products, so it's not subject to hazard. It's not going to be subject to the hazardous waste regs. I think, let me see if documentation's in here. There's something I remember out of that conversation. It was like 3 or 4 years ago. That's why I can't remember everything off the top of my head. Again, it's not going to be considered a waste. It's going to be burned as a fuel. I'm just going through the FAQs. Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of document. I think what I saw was, I don't remember, it was a bill of lading.
Yeah.
There was something that the facility had to show that this contractor was taking it, but it was being recovered as a commercial chemical product. Which, oh boy.
Yeah, what we would want to see is just some sort of documentation showing that it's actually being managed as a product and not managed as a hazardous waste, and someone's actually doing something appropriate with it.
That makes sense. I'm just not sure the regulations require that. That's what I was trying to find for you guys. But I'm not able to put my fingers on it that quickly. But I will be reaching out with the link to the webinar. I'm not sure if there's interest in having a copy of your presentation as well, and then I can
I can send that in.
Okay, if you want to PDF that and send it over to me, I can also gather up that guidance having to do with documentation when something is being managed as a commercial chemical product, and let everyone know what is actually required. But it might not be the traditional disposal record that everyone is used to seeing. So let me see if of this one we answered live. I think right now we don't have any other open questions. I know that was maybe a little bit shorter webinar than we normally do, but it was a really great introduction to this very complicated type of facilities, since they have so many moving parts and they're also regulated by multiple entities, which always makes it more interesting. So I'll give people another minute to see if there's any other questions that they've thought of. And if not, we'll close the webinar today.
Andrea, I'll add on to that question about the fuel filters. From the storage tank side, when they have a contractor come out to service the dispensers, they give them a work order to show that they replace filters or something like that. The problem comes in with the individual gas stations is they'll have some of them. It gets a little complicated because each of these chains, so far we've done Circle K, Speedway, Gate, First Coast Energy, which is Shell. Each of them are different. But some of them hire one contractor to service all of their locations. So that contractor will take that day and go to whatever locations need servicing, collect those fuel filters, leave them just like the service, the work order, no actual manifest or receipt or anything like that. They combine those filters into a drum, and then that drum eventually is what gets disposed. So it's very hard to track in some of these what filters are coming from what location, how many, how often, because everything is commingled. You must have somebody at your front door again.
I'm so sorry, you guys. I had put one dog in a back bedroom and then the other one was up here, but they're outside now. Yes, they're coming to kill me today. So the dogs must intervene. So Jean, just to kind of circle back around, are you thinking that the documentation you guys would at least want to see at a minimum is those work orders to show that they're
and the bottom line is where one of the big issues we're looking at is it's on the generator to make the hazardous waste determination. The generators are not doing anything. They're leaving it up to the contractors that are coming out, and the contractors aren't really doing anything. It's kind of waiting until it gets to the disposal facility. It's odd. They do not handle waste like any typical business. And I understand it's the nature of a gas station. They are different, but if they're held to the same standards for hazardous waste management, they need to make some changes.
So everything I'm seeing in guidance is if the gasoline is getting recovered and being used for its intended purpose, which is fuel blending, that it is not a solid waste. So there are probably
Right.
not any
But
RCRA requirements for documentation of that.
but the same is not true for the filters, though, Andrea.
No, I would agree with you definitely on the
Yeah.
filters themselves, but the question was originally about the gas from the filters, I
Oh,
thought.
gotcha.
And
So,
see,
yeah.
the part of the problem with the gas from the filters is some of them are emptying it into PCW.
Oh, now
They're
that's a
not
whole nother
collecting it separately.
problem. Yeah. That'd be a whole nother problem.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I think we have one more question here, and it's how do you suggest they document their totals for their fuel pumps, PCW, and fuel filters? Oh, that's going to be so the fuel filters, if they're recycled, they don't need documentation, right? But the fuel pumps and the PCW, I know there's some regulations surrounding those for sure. What do you guys think about that? Documentation for fuel pumps, PCW, and fuel filters. And would a logbook be sufficient?
Yeah, PCW regs specifically say that you have to do a hazardous waste determination on it.
So you'd
So
be
they
looking for hazardous waste determination, documentation. And if it is a hazardous waste, certainly, then they have to follow the appropriate generator category requirements. So the PCW, I can see I've been out of Florida for a while now, and I can't remember all the stuff around PCW.
For the most part, PCW is exempt, but the PCW regs do say that they have to make a hazardous waste determination.
And I do remember there's some notification requirements to the state for transporters too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they have to be a licensed PCW transporter.
They
Now, the
also, you know, have to show that it contains recoverable product. And it doesn't contain hazardous constituents above what is found in the original product.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And then the fuel filters, if they're drained, I thought those were falling under recyclable, like for oil filters. Can you guys comment on that?
Yes. I'll let
No,
you
go ahead,
go.
Jordan. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, they can be recycled. But again, that's something we like to see, that they're actually documenting that it's being recycled, because otherwise, you know, we don't know what they're actually doing with it. So I mean, yeah, you're not required to keep records, but that's the only way you can show that they're being properly managed.
I know, here we go with the catch-22 again with
Yeah.
some of the exemptions, but wanting to be able to prove how it's being managed. But to answer the question that's in the Q&A, I think you guys would probably be happy if you saw a logbook that mentioned where these things were going, if documentation is not technically required. They were asking if a logbook would be sufficient.
Yeah, we would like to see more, but based on what I'm saying, a logbook would be great.
What about fuel pumps? I'm not 100% sure. Is that a component within the dispenser? I don't know if I'm familiar with the fuel pump waste.
Yeah, I mean, mostly what I've seen, things like the hoses and nozzles, things like that, as long as they're completely drained, they're non-hazardous. So I haven't seen any sort of management about those items. So
it sounds more like equipment that previously contained,
yeah,
probably gasoline or diesel. Okay, so I think we've answered his question or their question.
I'm wondering if that fuel pump is referring to dispenser. That's one thing that that I've advised, they have to be careful. In the tanks world, there's the dispensers are what you use to dispense gas into your car. A
The
pump
hose and the nozzle.
and the stand-up dispenser.
Okay, the stand-up thingy that we see the
Yeah.
spinning around with the cost and all that.
Yeah, that's the dispenser. A
Okay.
pump is inside the tank that pumps the gas out of the tank to the dispenser. So in the tank world, pump means something different from dispenser.
Okay, that might be a really great diagram to have on the presentation in May. That language. And the person that had commented previously said that they meant the fuel drained from the filters, not the pumps. So we talked about the fuel. Yeah, the fuel is definitely a commercial chemical product and is not considered a solid waste if they're recycling, if they're reusing it. So
Yeah, but again, yeah, if they're sending it to be recycled, we would
I'm
like to
gonna
see
go
some
ahead
sort of
and include,
documentation.
yeah, the rules don't require documentation. I'm just letting y'all know.
Yeah, no, I know, but
But I'll include the RCRA online document 11449 that talks about fuel that's being drained or off spec. And if it's getting used in the manner it's intended, it's not considered a solid waste. Therefore, we know in the hazardous waste world, it can't be a hazardous waste. So it's exempt from quite a bit of stuff. But I'll include that with the rest of the stuff we talked about. We have one more thing. Contractors are hauling petroleum contact water waste normally. So is having that documentation sufficient? Is the PCW being burned for fuel? I would imagine they are recovering. Like you were saying, Jordan, they have to recover something.
They separate out the petroleum constituent from it.
So it says contractors are hauling PCW waste normally. I wonder what type of contractor they're talking about. Like the contractor that's actually, and you know what? Let me see if I can unmute this person. I think that worked.
Hi, this is Tina.
Hi, Tina. I'm sorry, I couldn't tell what the first name or if it was a he or a she. So thank you for introducing yourself.
That's no problem. Yeah, I just see a lot of the times they hire like a contractor to come and change out fuel filters and, service the pumps in general. So like they do have like some sort of work order or like a checklist of what was serviced, like checked valve, check this, check that. So I didn't know if that is like sufficient. Here it's, I think, Adams Tank that does a lot of the service for our gas stations. So they normally just have some kind of like receipt from them. Is that enough to document that their PCW water is being handled correctly? Or is that something that needs to be in a separate logbook?
We would have to see that they're actually doing the hazardous waste determination on it, and that they're actually doing some sort of testing on it, to show that it contains recoverable product and it's not, it doesn't have hazardous constituents above the level of the fuel.
So just the contractor taking it off site for them is not sufficient. They have to show, because none of them are doing the waste determination. They're
Exactly.
just hiring somebody to service their pumps. So that's kind of included in the service. So is it something that needs to be addressed to that contractor to show that they are recycling the PCW or recovering it? That falls on the generator or on the contractor?
I think it all falls on the generator because it's their waste. It's not
Okay.
the contractor's waste.
I would agree.
Okay, so it's just not enough for them to just come service the pumps, leave their little work order and show us that documentation. They have to actually. So as far as a waste determination, what do you suggest they do? Because they're just kind of assuming that that's the service they're hiring, is to recover it. What do you suggest they do for like a waste determination? Have you seen any do like TCLP tests or anything?
I haven't seen anything. Again, no one is doing the hazardous waste determination.
That's what I mean. So to like, especially at the store level, talking to some of these people, it's like deer in the headlights. So I haven't.
Well,
had much-
again, that's why it's important to get with someone from the corporate level.
Right. So like you said, it's hard to sometimes track down the corporate level people, but again, I find that even when you do speak with corporate, it's just never being implemented at the store level. So have you had any success like having corporate intervene and kind of implement these new ways of record keeping and other
We
things?
just started in like late January, so
Mhm. Yeah, it's
haven't
a
seen.
challenge. Anytime corporate, is involved, it's very hard at the store level. Like you
Yeah.
said, the turnover is unbelievable. So it makes it difficult to really even have a conversation about this stuff and have it, make any difference the next time you go back, like starting over.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we are working with one chain right now that we are tracking that. And we've tracked it to the point that we're asking for the waste profile because they're telling us that they did an analysis before they sent it. And we're waiting for the analysis. So it's been a week now and they haven't produced anything. So we're beginning to wonder if there is an analysis.
Yeah. And if they do the waste determination once, that's sufficient for every service.
Well, they can use generator knowledge. So the thing with PCW is it just cannot contain any constituents above the original product. So if it's PCW that they're pumping out of the sumps, and a sump is the container that's underneath the dispenser, or they also have spill buckets that prevent an overflow. It's what the delivery trucks hook up to fill the tanks. And each time they detach the hose, a little product comes out, gets caught in the spill bucket. That's what they're there for. And they have piping sumps and submersible turbine pump sumps that collect water from rainwater. So those are the sources where they pump out that PCW commonly. If that's where it's coming from, you can pretty much use generator knowledge and say that it's not going to, it's basically product. It's product with water. So it's not going to have any hazardous waste constituents above the product. So those kind of things, they can pretty much use generator knowledge. But when it comes to a spill, where you're not sure maybe where it could have come just from the tank, it could have come from a vehicle, those could be a little more iffy.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that would require analysis.
Okay, thank you.
there's some really interesting information in McCoy Unraveled about these fuel water mixtures. There's some RCRA online documents that give some clarification too. It's too much to read while we're just sitting here chatting. But again, it is pointing a little bit to commercial chemical product, but they're talking about the water can't have an excess of 0.5 parts per million benzene with no free product. Is that kind of where you're getting? Is it 0.5 parts per million, the fuel level or something that you've been referencing?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, because they're talking about water with an excess of 0.5 parts per million benzene with no free product. It can be an excluded commercial chemical product again, and that can be bulked with contaminated fuel and delivered to a fuel recovery facility. So I was kind of curious where the waste determination part was coming in when you guys were talking about the waste determination. But I can include some of these guidance documents too. I don't know, as long as Florida doesn't have something more specific than the federal level.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if that's a Florida administrative code thing or.
Yeah, I know.
Actually,
The PCW is.
Yeah, I'm trying. Trying to read through it all very quickly, but so we're definitely gonna have some follow-up documentation that might help some facilities guide through this.
Yeah, and like Jordan said, we're in the early stages of this, so we're continually to discover new stuff. And it's kind of like a snowball rolling downhill.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, the digger we deep, the more questions we're uncovering.
I think that's obvious just by the small group of people with the questions. So
Yeah.
yeah. No, that was a really great introduction to this industry. So, and it's a little complicated too, because there's the whole commercial chemical product. I don't want to use the word exemption, but commercial chemical products that are used for their intended purpose are not subject to being a solid waste. So that excludes them from the hazardous waste world. That's the wording I'll use.
Yeah.
So that makes it complicated as well. And like I said, I had to dive into it by doing one of those terminals, and they're like, and it was the exact same thing that happened. I'm like, well, what do you do with this fuel? Or what do you do with these absorbents? And they're like, they're recycled, they're exempt. And I'm like, what? What rule is showing that? And it was all the commercial chemical products. So that's how I dove into it. So that's why I had some of those documents saved. But well, we don't have any other open questions. So Jordan has had his contact information on the screen for a while as well. So hopefully you guys copied that down if you want to continue the conversation or ask some additional questions. And we'll definitely be looking forward to the City of Jacksonville's presentation in the May workshop as well. So I think with that said, we'll go ahead and close out the webinar. And
Okay.
I got another one that just squeezed in. Don just said he's become aware that FDA is going, they're doing a lot of inspections of gas stations for the tobacco regulations. Well, that's interesting.
That is interesting.
Yes, that's very interesting. So thank you for sharing that, Don. He said fantastic presentation. I agree. So, all right,
thank you guys very much for making time.
You're welcome. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why I'm saying you're welcome. Thank you, Jordan, and everyone else thanks you. I'm gonna go ahead and stop.
We will see y'all in Daytona.
Sounds good. All right, have a good rest of the day, everyone.